Experimenting with the future, a trends and forecasts panel. Experimenting with the future asks a developer, an artist, an interior designer, and an architect to navigate the future of the industry. This talk is all about what is to come, and as we look to uncover what the industry should be expecting in the decades ahead. To kick us off is Dean Young. Dean Young is the founder of innovative property development firm Nexxagen. Having launched the company in 2020, Young has made Nexxagen a rising name in the Durban development industry, focusing on the property innovations of the future and specializing in sustainable development. His project portfolio includes luxury residential builds, such as the Aurum Eco Development in Zimbali Lakes Resort, where renewable energy solutions work to raise the standard of green environments and lifestyles. Please join me in welcoming Dean to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Distinguished guests, and nice to have you all and to be able to share with you our insights into the future. I'm from Nexxagen. I'm the managing director of Nexxagen, and we've developed Aurum Zimbali Lakes. And I'll talk a little bit about Aurum a bit later on. But and that's our company, that's our contact information, if any of you need information later on. But we're here to talk about the future, but we cannot talk about the future without looking at what our present state is. And yesterday I had the privilege of going to Home Affairs in the middle of the CBD, and I happened to take a picture of this, is what our current state is. And you'll notice that in this picture there's no engagement with the green spaces or the outside part of the city. But where we're trying to get to is our future, which looks something like this. Yeah, I couldn't quite capture or find an image that was crystal clear enough, but I hope you can kind of see the picture that we hope that our future will hold. And in this picture, you'll see that there's a big engagement with the outside space, bringing the outside into the buildings and taking the inside of the buildings outside. And there's a lot of interaction between both spaces. So in the future, I see we'll have increase in luxury brands that are required in the future. People will be looking for a sense of security, and there's an extension of growth in where people are looking for created experiences. We've seen at the heart of it, the future is going to be about people, and people are the most powerful force for the future, and that's what we need to keep in mind as we think of the future, and also thinking about including the underprivileged so attracting the right talent to assist us in building this kind of future and scaling these projects so that our future looks bright. There will be an increase in transportation services, such as the likes of Uber. Careem is increasingly being used by people overseas, where it's basically a digital platform that we can use for things like, say you forget your passports at the airport. You'll be able to use Kareem. It's a digital platform, and be able to pick up your passport from home and bring it to the airport. So we'll see an increase in these kind of digital platforms being used by you and I as we go into the future. And I think what COVID has taught us is that we need to be prepared for shocks in the world that nobody could have anticipated. And these shocks kind of disrupt our ecosystem and subsequently change the environment that we all live in. There will be a growth in the digital platforms and synergies and artificial intelligence that we're going to use in the future as the gateway to the future. There will be an increase in projects such as solar powers, where in other parts of the world, these solar towers are being used as parabolic troughs that are used to transfer energy and store energy in the future. We've got ESCOM that at the moment we've got load shedding, and hopefully in the future we'll see bigger projects being done on scale, and load shedding and all of these energy constraints will be a thing of the past. Other developments include robotic cleaning of solar power energy. We see in other parts of the world there's solar farms that are being developed, and that's going to be an increasing trend in the future. You'll see further developments in the fourth industrial revolutions and on-demand services. We'll also see electronics and communication becoming increasingly important. And at the moment, we've only seen the tip of the iceberg when it comes to solar energy. We're currently only using about 3% of the available capacity. And in the future, this is going to be a growing trend. In other parts of the world, we were in Dubai about a week ago, and there, when we're transacting about buying property, guys are talking about selling property and using cryptocurrency to pay for property. And that's becoming an accepted currency for transacting. But I think at the heart of things is we're seeing a lot of trend towards sustainable development, and that has been the growing theme in the property awards and the conventions overseas. Is sustainability is gaining traction and will be a force that continues into the future, where the likes of EDGE certification and elite certification become increasing topic and demanded by the clients that are buying properties. I think the future is going to be a lot less about individualism, and I think there's going to be a lot more collaboration going into the future, where young people will need to be at the forefront of making decisions and being part of the response to climate change. And that's a theme that will continue into the future. Climate change is a real factor, and we have the Paris Accord, which was agreed on a couple of years ago. But if we look at the Paris Accord and compare it to what's actually happening out in the world, we'll notice that we way off the targets that the Paris Accord has set out for us. And there's so much that we need to do in changing this going forward. We're also going to see an increase in the effectiveness of the Generation Z and our interaction with Generation Z. And they are going to become the climate change champions, and youth power is going to be leveraged to bring about the change that we need in our societies. Also looking at our urban planning frameworks and policies, and I think Nathan's going to talk on that a bit later on. These need to be geared towards being relevant for climate change and sustainability going forward. I think also in the future we're going to have an increase in autonomous mobility and delivery by the use of drone technology. You'll see in that city on the left domain there, it's a highly efficient city where transportation works and everything is connected. Probably I couldn't quite find an image that portrayed the drone being used much more extensively in the future to connect everyone, and transportation efficiency increasing dramatically as well. So that's in a nutshell how I see the future. I also see you see in places like Dubai where there's actually museums that are geared towards the future. You've got the Museum of the Future, where it brings everyone being engaged in determining what the future holds, and social spaces being used much more effectively to bring about the change that we so desperately need, and connecting space, ecology, and climate change in one place. I also see in the future us collaborating a lot more. The use of BIM in our developments. I think the days of a silo approach to designing buildings and designing urban precincts is going to be a thing of the past, where, I mean, at the moment we are using the cloud to collaborate, but I see us using the cloud and BIM much more effectively, where professionals work together in the cloud and bring about the change that we need to see. And that's one thing we learned when we were doing the Aurum development, is how do we get the full design team thinking about different aspects of development, whether it's orientation of the building, whether it's how do we reuse rainwater harvested more effectively, and how do we use renewable energy. And in putting together these designs, we just couldn't have done it in a siloed approach. And that I see us in the future using a lot more collaboration in the future. So our journey, I'm just going to give you a quick journey. This is not the future, but it is our journey to the future. It might look like a small development at 6 units. We got 4 units at the back, two in the front. But what is unique about this development is in the center here, we've got a 80,000 liter rainwater harvester tank. On the top of those roofs, we've also got solar panels that generates 5,000 kilowatts, and obviously clients can increase that going forward. We've also got energy efficiency built into the design, water efficiency, low flow meters, and also low flow faucets, showers, shower hoses, and everything in the buildings. We're one of the first developments that achieved an EDGE Advanced rating in the North Coast, which is quite a unique thing, where we've achieved a 60% saving in energy, a 30% savings in water, and a 27% savings in embodied energy in the building materials used. So in the future, I think these certifications are going to become something that clients demand going forward. And if your building is not certified, you will have to basically discount the price of your product offering, because clients are going to demand this a little bit more in the future. And in the future, I mean, right now we grapple with trying to explain to clients the need for EDGE certification. People want to know the rands and cents. Why should I pay this premium for this product? But in the future, clients are going to become a lot more savvy in doing their own calculations and trying to understand what is in it for each one of them. And yes, it doesn't make a lot of difference in the first few years, but as you project it into the future, you'll see that the baseline home utilities is somewhere on the top there, whereas an EDGE Advanced Utilities is a lot lower than the baseline's home. And that's, in the future, that's going to be used a lot more by clients to make decisions. And those developers that are not thinking about clients' bottom line and how it affects the net disposable income will be left behind. There's a whole lot of benefits, but I won't go in specifically into each one of them. I'd rather, if we've got some questions after in the panel discussion, I'll take questions. But in effect, it's basically leads to better quality homes in terms of health and well-being. And well-being is a topic that is very prevalent going into the future. So thank you very much for your attention and your time. I'll take questions afterwards.
Thank you, Dean. Co-founder and Chief Curatorial Officer of Usurpa Africa, Kokona Kay Kay Ribane is a multidisciplinary South African conceptual artist. His career ambition lies in the mission to empower African artists through a decentralized platform that introduces digital art and design as modern forms of creative investment. Reaching into art, fashion, and culture, Kay Kay brings the visionary's perspective to the narrative of the future of design. Please join me in welcoming Kay Kay to the stage.
Hello. Wow, that was a better intro. I think we're done. Thank you very much. Thank you so much, everyone, for looking as glamorous as you are. And thank you, Durban, for hosting us. I haven't been to Durban in so long, and this is one of those pivotal, refreshing moments to be. All right, so this is a gallery called Usurpa. I myself am chief curator, co-founder, and basically the name is Usurpa, taken from, to take position of power legally or by force, all right? But I think when you think about it, it's more about what type of power in terms of the digital narrative. How are we taking power of the consistent thought of what digital art is, right? So we're changing that. We're changing our perspective of digital art, all right? So about us, basically, we're an exclusive Web3 gallery, right? A platform pioneering in digital art as a legacy investment. All forms of art. As an art collector, you'd love to stretch your collection, all right? So this is digital collectibles. The beauty about that, these are the spaces that we're actually using. We've created a physical space. So I won't let that play too long, but that kind of cooled us down a little. But the beauty about it is spaces are very important for any form of art, the community, the artist. And we are powered by Samsung, but I'm definitely not a TV salesperson, all right? But the beauty about this moment and our partnership with Samsung has been a perfect marriage where we meet together innovation and African narrative. Right? The importance about technology is that the feeling of it not really taking the spirit of who we are as humans, but yet amplifying and giving more the artists the ability and the tools to create art in all platforms, new mediums. So this is our space, our digital gallery, which allows us to interchange the space instantaneously to be any form of exhibition. When you talk about spaces that can innovate, move, grow, in a day it can be 5 spaces, it can be different activations. You can have 5 solo shows. The beauty about these matte frame TVs is how do you have digital art in your home, right? Because most of the time we've seen digital art, we've heard the word NFT. Yes, has any of you heard the name NFT? Which I really don't like to say much, right? But I think Africa is always in a great position to wait for the mist to settle, right? Then we reintroduce what that means to us and our approach to it, right? So our approach has been unique, is that we wait for the mist to settle as thinking about it as a digital collectible. So it has a certificate of ownership, and more importantly, for the artist, royalties in perpetuity, right? So every time an artist buys artwork, or you buy it to him, and amazing suit, by the way, sir, and you resell it to them, every time it gets sold, the artist gets royalties in perpetuity. What does that do for the ecosystem of artists? That the concept of a starving artist is non-existent. So it's solving a problem with innovation and African narratives, right? So our mission is to empower the creatives, right? Because they are the best storytellers. They tell us who we are now. So when we look at the lens from African optimism, which is what Usurpa is about, African optimism really takes us to the next level of what we can tell to the world, all right? These are one of the artists that we've selected, the creators, the storytellers, the movers and the shakers, and the dressers. Everyone is quite stylish. That's why we've selected them. I'm just kidding. The exciting thing about these artists are they are amazing storytellers about who we are today. Your Baba Jeko, your Nandipam Tambo, your Terence Maluleka, your Seth Pimentel, even Johnny Allison. These are multidisciplinary artists. And I think 2020 has taught every artist is to be a multidisciplinary artist, not one discipline, right? And the beauty of these guys, they do it all. And now, digital has allowed us to revolutionize how we view art in our homes, all right? So it's a creators platform. Without them, we don't exist. Without these artists and how we treat them does not exist anymore. So these are the pioneers of who we are right now. So we believe in the power of the African creators and the wealth of their vision, right? So when we say we're going to and would love to innovate with the creators, you give them access to amazing equipment, tools, that can really refine how their storytelling is told. So an art piece can move, angulate through time. We always loved calling it turning brush to code, right? So you can actually code artwork that could move through time. So it could breathe, it could open its eyes, and it could tell a different story through a time span. But you can ask that question when the panel begins. So history meets the future. And these are some of the events, I'll play it just more briefly, of the community that it brings, right? Because if digital art is only on digital platforms, on your laptop, or on your screen, on your phone, how do we engage? Who are these artists that we're actually inviting? And what community do they bring? Because if I'm creating and investing in an art piece, I need to know who the artist is, right? And what's their story? What's the depth of what they're telling of who we are right now? So these are some of the events. You're invited on the next one, ladies and gentlemen. So what you saw there was a community of artists, people, fresh, speaking about what it is to be an African in the artist space, right? The beauty about this moment, it was a Women's Month event where we're actually pioneering female artists, where we're onboarding female artists, 26 for Women's Month, right? So the beauty about this was having the power to have female African artists work within the digital space. Because for some reason, females and tech, it's not best friends, But the beauty about this moment is allowing that to exist. So we onboarded young creatives, young African artists into the space, and most importantly, bringing the next generation, the Blackboard Initiative, where young kids can get exposed to such events, such beautiful presentations. So the beauty about these moments is that we're all speaking and understanding what it means to them to have a new medium, like any other medium where it's brush, paint, all the way to code, but to have the ability to send your work through a digital medium. And these are some of the events. So the beauty about our gallery is able to access and be experienced in different spaces. As you can see, it always pulls a crowd because we're all interested of what's next in the future. So to be able to have artworks in your home that allows curation to happen instantaneously. You buy a new couch that changes the whole trajectory of your home. Now you have the power to curate it instantly and change the feel. A new year can finally feel like a new year with art that is collected and curated according to your home, which makes dynamic curation. All right, so this was Decorex, R&B, Art Fair, Latitude. And as you can see, the young ones are really engaged in it already. The future is here. I'm more excited to introduce Usurpa Tech Labs, right? The ability of having access is such a big thing in the country. Access to simple things as material, right? Just a paintbrush is something so profound to have. art materials, now all the way to technology, because things are moving radically fast. So global audience. These artists are phenomenal artists, and we want to give them to the world. And I would always say it's better to sell African art to the world than anywhere else. And these were basically our manifestation. When we began, we're like, we'd love to have the tech labs, have young kids sitting there, really be able to have a space where they can use the technology that constantly changes. Now there's the iPhone 15. I don't know what's next. Cars are flying. But having a space to simply have a technology to evolve the artwork, which evolves our storytelling, right? And we did it. For the first time, we were able to put it to test, right, with the help of a lot of partners, because nothing happens in a bubble. Nothing happens in a bubble. It all relieves and is always according to us, our collaboration, how we take these spaces and bring artists into the space, and how we give them the tools, the accessibility of giving them the ability to test their tools, test their ability to collaborate. And even, this is Naledi Mudupi, ladies and gentlemen, one of the artists that believed in Usurpa. And she gave us the ability to teach. We gave her a first teaching session of illustration, and she was teaching young artists like herself who really are inspired to them. So it's the platforms that we give, right? So these are the young kids, the technology as well. The storytelling is ready to be told, all right? Stories are ready to be told. So the beauty about that is stories about what it means to be African, our African identity, our complex history, and most importantly, our African optimism, right? And this is a bit of our catalog of some of the digital artworks that you'll see when you go to our platform or our website called Usurpa, and just really catch up to what we're doing. So this is an illustration of an artist who took 5 physical pieces. So it's not only digital, 5 physical pieces, and we made move, undulate, make them move in different ways because they are able to do that in your home, right? That's the beauty of the platform, and these are some of the works, right? Terence Maluleka, I think they all really speak about what it is to be African optimistic, you know, the Sotho cultivation. There's so much to really look up for in this new space. Baba Cheko, where you can actually have a subtle movement at the back when you're watching the artwork in your home. So in a dinner conversation, someone would just ask, did that just blink? Or is it me? It always sparks a new conversation at your home, right? And these are artists that are just on the tip of the storytelling. You give them the equipment, the spaces, and you could have stories that could change how we view ourselves globally. And I think this is a perfect time to tell these stories, to use the artist to tell it through us. Because not all the time are we able to tell these stories through ourselves, right? There's different ranges, different forms of artworks, right? So I'm excited to challenge you to learn more about what it is next about the Samsung and Usurpa collaboration in the future with these phenomenal artists. And you can see the price range. You can see over there, some are one of one, which means you and everyone in the world would know that you are the only rightful owner to these pieces. And I'd love to say humbly, thank you so much for this conversation and your time.
Thank you, Kay Kay. I think we still need a whole conference just on NFTs. Next up, we've got Victoria Wood. Victoria is the Managing Director and Lead Designer at Mobius Design Studio. Victoria's expertise, garnered from experience around the world, is grounded in the passion for creating with integrity, quality, and beauty. Along with 20 years of ventures across the design sector, the successful completion of the Unmatched Pencil Club in a mere 365 days has spotlighted her prowess in the local and global industry. Thanks.
Sure, I feel like I have quite a tough act to follow. And I feel like I'm going to bring you right down into the more intimate, more domestic scale. But that was very inspiring. Thank you. Okay. Hi, everyone, and thank you for this opportunity. Thank you for being here. When I was asked to speak, I found the subject matter quite a challenge to talk about trends in a quick 5-minute presentation. So bear with me. It is also, I'm going to try to be as quick as possible, but it's also just sort of a flashlight onto what I feel is what I see in our future. It is obviously a personal perspective, and in that context, I wanted to give you some background. Also, just quickly, it made me think about needing you to understand what our principles are and what our process is, and with that mindset, how I'm going to speak about what I am. I haven't got the clicker. Here it is. Okay, so interior design. We design and create environments for humans to spend the vast majority of our lives in. We spend up to 3/4 of our lives within buildings. Our interior environments influence our human experience and our sensory connection to our environment. It's important to understand the neurological impact of beauty on our well-being. Beauty is necessary. Designing for the senses is necessary. We read our environments through our senses. They're what connects us to this world. We need to create habitable spaces that have a sense of place and atmosphere. There's a desire for spaces that enhance our well-being and spaces that show that we care, both aesthetically and sustainably. Below is a quote by Ilse Crawford. Design not only shapes the spaces that we're using every day, but also our experience in those spaces. It can change our connections with each other. It can change our behaviors. It can nudge us to better behaviors. In terms of health and wellness, it can create habits and rituals that improve our lives. Our process. We, at Mobius, we are obsessed with materiality and a layered attention to sensory details. We consider texture, tone, light, proportion, contrast, color. The spaces that relate to the environment are contextual. Spaces that reflect the individuality, the people that we're designing for and their values. Spaces that evolve. Spaces that are brave and timeless. Bringing you to our forecast. It was with this mindset that I approached the subject of experimenting with the future in interior design. I'm going to talk about 4 pillars of relevance we recognize as influencing interior design. Each will be demonstrated with a couple of pages of reference images, followed by an inspired ballot board from our local sources. The first pillar is being materiality. We're living in a migration movement, especially since COVID. We're seeing that people have left cities to live in more rural areas, and they're desiring a hybrid environment that bridges the urban and the rural, where the design meets in the middle. We're seeing a focus on more rustic and tactile materials, but sophisticated and considered. There's a desire for comfortable luxury, but not in the sense of opulence, and a desire to connect with each other, to create community, to collaborate, and to craft. I've called this next slide heartwarming materiality, as I feel there's a gravitation towards richer tones and tones that celebrate texture. There's an increased appreciation for imperfection and contrast, and a curiosity around this. There's a curiosity around how we use materials differently and how we can repurpose materials. I selected these 3 slides for the rich quality of materials and their bold and brave pairing of materiality. That's overall effect is heartwarming. Take from it what you will, but I'm particularly smitten by the combination of matte and polished and interesting use of materiality. The next one. These slides reference the exciting trends we're seeing with ceramics. And while ceramics have been used for many, many years in history, that we know there's this really exciting variety of beautiful ceramics that we're seeing produced in our country. I chose the slide on the far left because I thought the use of scale and proportion is really interesting, and I feel like we are playing a lot with scale and proportion in our future. The central slide is just timeless in terms of its heartwarming materiality and very sophisticated the way it's been used on the hearth and on the bench. And then the far right images of our local designer, Tristan Duplessis, and those tiles are made by Kolki Ceramics, who are doing the most unbelievable work, as you know, as local Durbanites. We then put together an inspiration palette based on a local inspiration palette based on some of the amazing local talent that we have in our country that are producing products that are deeply heartwarming. The first is a chair by David Cranow. The amazing work by Borgberg and their interesting use of concrete and the colors that they draw from, inspirationally they draw from their environment. This amazing hand-forged metal workshop in Reba Castile called Urban Toolshed. The beautiful stitched leather detail of Dark Horse's furniture, an artwork by Michael Koricki, who is an architect and has found his creativity through ceramics, and the woven mohair by Francis V.H. That's pillar one. A second pillar I'm going to talk about is nature. Let's just say this. Nature stimulates our senses. We feel like better human beings when we connect with nature. And bringing nature into our interior environments is also no new trend. But what we are seeing is a garden revival, a revival in spending more time in actual gardening and in taking the inside out. We've long talked about bringing the outside in, but there's a new look in talking about taking the inside outside. Biophilic living and biophilic design is familiar to all of us. It's about bringing the outdoors in to enhance connectivity to the natural environment, to enhance our well-being, our health, our productivity, by creating a relaxing environment with a visual link to nature. This movement continues, but we're seeing the focus shifting to the outdoors and taking the inside to the outside. We're experiencing a revival of gardening and an increased focus on creating beautifully designed outdoor spaces. Spaces that are a growing appreciation and understanding that the exterior landscaping of the building influences the interiors and not just the other way around. The next two slides are just examples of incredible biophilic design that I came across. This is a retail store that just feels so fresh if I feel like I can inhale and I'm outside, but I'm actually inside. It's the way that they've used the materiality on the floor, it's the organic shapes, it's the contrast in the materials and the tones that they've chosen. And then the slide on the right is a triple-story live wall installation in a hotel lobby in Singapore. And I feel like I'm in the jungle. It's just showing you how biophilic design definitely has an impact on our well-being and nature, and that trend and movement is not going away. The next slide on a more domestic scale is how we are seeing these organic shapes and soft edges that mimic nature continuing from the shapes of the tapestry or the soft edges of the furniture, the curves, down to the way we're using hard surfaces, but we're rounding them and softening them, making them feel more organic and making them feel soft. Okay, so our inspirational palette. We are definitely seeing more clever ways to recycle materials. We are seeing amazing furniture joiners in this country that I'm completely bowled away by. One at the moment is Def Studios, who has an amazing use of scale and proportion. There's Feel Flux Ceramics, who for so long have been making the most incredible bespoke custom ceramics. There's artwork by Amy Rush, who collects who collects plastic bags off beach combing and cleaning, and then weaves these into the most intricate tapestry-looking artworks. There's Babylon's Turin-inspired outdoor kitchens, which we are seeing popping up everywhere. And there's also the magnificent artworks by Adam Birch. That's our inspirational palette for nature. Okay, our third pillar is color, my favorite subject of all. Bold use of color. We're definitely seeing a rise in bold use of color. Color continues to play a very important role in our worlds. Color has the power to transform a space, change the atmosphere, enhance our feelings of joy, trigger memories, stimulate excitement, or create calm. There's a consistent attraction to earthier tones. There's also a rise in the return of the intricate pattern, in my opinion, intricate floor patterns. So we know that our natural tones are always, or we are always drawn to them, but we're also seeing real bold expression of color blocking. For example, the slide on the far left, which is Luc Edward Hall's hotel in Paris. Such a crazy, amazing combination of colors. And what I'm really enjoying in these slides and what I'm perceiving in the future is much more focus on our ceilings. Often our ceilings are there to disappear, and I feel like there's a much more playful attitude with ceilings happening. That slide on the far right, by Ilse Crawford. I know this is an older building, but I love how this is a soup kitchen that she had a very low budget on, and she just transformed by color blocking in one calm tone, and then creating a super simple but super effective light installation, feature ceiling installation, which transformed the space and transformed the people who were using the space, who used to move in and very fast through the building because it was very clinical. And by making these changes, they found that the people who were coming to the soup kitchen were now spending longer lengths of time and engaging with others, and so relationships were improved. Another example of how interiors affect the way we behave. Okay, and then this also too close to my heart. I'm really enjoying and seeing and perceiving that we're going to be much more experimental with our floor finishes. Greg showed us how experimental he is. I hope we can all be as brave as you. And so, these were just some inspirational slides for showing how the floor can actually be the main focus of the room, and the rest can actually pare back and allow that to sing. I think we're just going to all learn to be a lot braver. I'm hoping there's more playfulness in all of us, more risk-taking, less afraid of making mistakes. Okay, our inspirational palette based on color. I'm obviously trying to look at everything that we have in this country, which we have such a rich availability of materiality. These terracotta tiles by Lovric, where he can make any custom color, are constantly inspire. The furniture by Beaufred, who are always playing with scale and proportion, are really playful and brave in what they're producing. Stripes, always timeless. I see the rise of the stripe again in many different forms and formats. Sorry, I've got a typo there. That's by Skinny Lemmings. The lamp by Dr. Mrs. In terms of color, this is definitely my color of the future. Tangerine. Orange is the color of creativity. Tangerine tone in this lamp is just magnificent. These guys are amazing with color, Dr. Mrs. And then this beautiful artwork by Marilee Southwood, which is an oil painting which feels like she's actually used both hands to create this. It's just an incredible burst of color that transforms an interior. Okay. So the fourth pillar and my final pillar is whimsy. Whimsical play with stripes, scale, and proportion. Go big, go playful, go chunky. Fun accents like oversized vases, sculptural furniture, quirky decor pieces. Add a touch of whimsy to any space while still exuding sophistication. It's the way to go if you want to infuse your own personality into a space. Expect overscaled proportions, chunky sculptural furniture elements, etc. The next slide. All I can say is it spoke to my heart. This is an eclectic collection of whimsy interior design. I love what is happening in that first slide, the crazy ceiling fittings, the wild patterns on the floor. I love the central slide with this very clever and creative and quirky way to deal with creating privacy around a central table. And then the overscaled lamp in the corner here, and this color combination of rusts and pinks and natural tones is just beautiful and whimsical. Same as this, just love the rise of the stripe, the intense overscaled ceiling designs. I just feel as interiors, we've got such a playful future ahead of us. I think we mustn't be afraid to make mistakes. I love the asymmetry. I come from an architectural background. 20 years ago, I would have absolutely been mortified at the thought of having 2 different basins in a bathroom. And now I can't get enough of contrast. Okay, and then our inspirational palette. This amazing side table by Tongue and Ochre. It's so whimsy, I feel like it would walk out of the room at night if I left it in the living room. There's Chloe Townsend, who has always just been brave and bold with her use of leather. Just love these crazy wall hooks by John Designs. Cork furniture by Weed. I mean, he is just making the most unbelievable furniture. He uses really bold colors. They're all recyclable. And then Peterson and Leonard are always challenging and always pushing the boundaries. I can't even begin to mention all the amazing designers. I know I haven't mentioned you all. The furniture in this room today by, I'm going to say it wrong, Kipiki, just blown away, really. We are, what I want to say, yeah, we are so spoiled. I believe there's a rise. I believe we're seeing a celebration of craft, a celebration of the artist, a desire to express ourselves through our interiors with unique artisanal design pieces that express our values and our individuality. I see the rise and celebration of the artisan. We have exceptional artists existing and emerging in this country, and I feel so fortunate to be a designer in our country and in this continent and in the South. I'm excited to be a part of a design community, a celebration of makers in place. We are all part of a community that can impact not only us as individuals, but the makers, the community, the environment. We can change the way we live and experience our lives by the design choices we make. We can embed these values in our designs and ultimately enhance our collective experiences. Collaborative design community, I think that's the future. And I would like to say thank you for this opportunity. Thank you very much.
Victoria. Next up, we've got Nathan Iyer, a designer across the fields of urban design, architecture, and landscape architecture. Nathan Iyer is the founder and creative director of award-winning design studio Iyer. Nathan is a thought leader on cities, having led a series of strategic projects in Durban, such as the Point Waterfront, the Moses Madiba Stadium Precinct, and People's Park, and the iconic Go Durban BRT stations. Currently, Nathan is the urban designer for 3 smart cities under construction in Mauritius. Welcome, Nathan.
Thank you very much. Can everyone hear me? Okay. When he put this on me, I thought I needed to break out in dance here and sing. But I can. Firstly, thank you for inviting me. When I first had the request to be part of the panel, I was in the back of my mind thinking, how best can I say no in a very kind way, until I heard the topic, which is to talk about Durban in 100 years. And I thought this is extremely intriguing. And, well, not just Durban, but to think about cities in the next 100 years and what would it mean. So obviously I jumped at the chance. So over the last month and a half or so, I've been pondering about the future of Durban and cities in general. And I think the first question you've got to ask yourself is, will we be here in 100 years? And my response to that is an absolute yes. And there are various reasons I say that. The first is the growth of technology and the exponential growth of technology. Technology changes tomorrow faster than it did yesterday. And what it does, I think, in the context of cities, would enable us to live in a much more harmonious way with cities. We'll be able to, through smart technology, monitor events, mitigate against disasters, and so on. So technology is our friend in terms of how we design for future cities. The second reason I say this is because I think as designers, it's incumbent upon us to think about the future with promise. So we can't look at tomorrow through the lens of yesterday's problems, because I think that would do a disservice to and I think the world is looking at us. Society looks at us to be innovative, to be creative, and to show the world a brighter possibility of what's to come. So, but having said that, I don't think we can completely say, let's forget about the factors that we do confront today, and which are serious issues. So there are certain challenges that we have to address, and we have to address with great urgency, and that's around climate change. Let's talk about 6 trends that are impacting the future that we need to think about. And foremost of those is our burning planet. And what we note since 1880, we've seen global temperatures rise by 1 degree. what the UN projects in 2050 that it'll increase to 1.5 degrees. And the worst case scenario in 100 years' time is projected to be between 2 and 4%. Obviously, that's the kind of worst case scenario. What does this mean? Well, simply put, in some countries, people will simply perish because of substantial heat gain. And particularly in disadvantaged parts of the world. What it means for crop production becomes absolutely critical. Food security that goes with that becomes a major issue. So how do we design our cities to ensure that we can include food production as part of it? But most fundamentally, what this would impact on is sea level rise. And here it's projected that by 2100, we'd experience somewhere in the region of 1 to 2 meters of sea level rise. Now, you can imagine as a coastal city what that would mean. So how do cities design for sea level rise and design sea defense systems that do more than provide just infrastructure, but also assets for the city and increases the amenity of cities? I think Dean mentioned it. I do think that I certainly hope that ESCOM won't be around in 100 years' time. I think I know that with a level of certainty. But we're going to have a new energy paradigm in 100 years' time. And I think it's beyond even electric vehicles, because electricity also demands a lot of energy. So we're going to start talking about other forms, like cars that are propelled by nitrogen. I think Toyota's already starting to experiment with that. So the energy challenge that we face today is not one of the future. Not to say that we should not design for it, because I think that's critical in itself. Another important trend that we're going to see is an increasing urban population. And I think we know this throughout time. Cities have always been the center of attraction for economic and social engagement. And in our context, if you look at South Africa and Durban and Johannesburg as major cities of economic activity, what we're going to see is a blurring of our borders. And that's because of the momentum around BRICS. And we're already talking about a lot more countries in the global south wanting to form part of the sort of BRICS nations. So our borders are going to be blurred, and people are going to be attracted from outside South Africa into our key centers. So dealing with concentrated population growth and the need for higher density development becomes quite important. And of course, designing cities that can manage substantial growth in the context of climate change. What we're also going to see is a shift in the way we move, meaning the way transport works in cities. And I think this is just beyond just the private car and autonomous vehicles. We're going to see a shift towards public transit, clean, safe public transit. But ultimately, I think the shift in the way we move is going to be at the most basic level, and that is cities are going to become walkable. By virtue of their complexity, their ability to accommodate a range of uses, there will be no need to move beyond your immediate neighborhood. I think the whole concept of the line is predicated on that. So cities that are designed around the pedestrian scale and the ability to access your basic needs within a short distance. I think many of the speakers have spoken about the greening of our cities. And I think we're going to see a lot more of this, not just as a strategy to combat heat gain in our cities, and biophilic design. I think we've spoken quite a lot about it. But also as a means to introduce food security in our cities. So I think we're going to start seeing this not just as an aesthetic response, but more than that. Okay, so that's the background in which I'm sort of putting forward these 6 propositions, almost provocations to the city, and in particular Durban, and how we respond to Durban. Someone else mentioned this. I think at the heart of sustainable cities is a people-centered city. So This is Pixley Kaseme Street, or West Street as we know it, in its current form. And imagine if we were to place emphasis on people and completely reimagine the space as a shared, at the base, obviously a shared space between cyclists, pedestrians, people on hoverboards, public transit in the form, in this case, of a monorail, our building starting to talk about an African identity. And I didn't speak about this, but I think Kay Kay had touched about this in his presentation, this notion of Afrofuturism and the impact of African design at a global level. I mean, if you look at global culture, Amapiano music is now played globally. You know, if you think about Black Coffee packed out Madison Avenue a couple of weeks ago. So it starts talking about African design, African culture becoming very much a global culture. So why aren't we designing our buildings to reflect our African identity instead of reaching out to Dubai or America? So this is the kind of opportunity we have to transform our cities. Notice there are no cars in this. This is about people-centered cities, public transit, and so on. This is also West Street, the notion of a hybrid city. And here we start talking about, again, public transit, but different functions, places to play, to recreate, to eat, to work, and hybrid in the sense of our buildings as well. So how do we design our buildings so that the facade, the ventilated facade that I think Greg spoke about earlier, is in fact a food garden, so that we grow our food along the facade of a building. He also spoke about materiality. How do we use timber in the construction of tall buildings? It's already been done. It is in fact a renewable resource and the way to go in terms of construction. We can't use today's technology to build in the future. So concrete and steel, we need to rethink. So a hybrid city is quite important. Now this one baffles me, and for a long time, as a coastal city. We have a waterfront city, but we don't have a waterfront. We have an amazing opportunity to do that. So this is, I think, Boatman's Road, which leads to Wilson's Wharf, if you're familiar with it. And imagine if we were to take the rail, put it underneath, remove the road that's there, and convert it into a waterfront promenade with buildings that start talking, start engaging with the public space, restaurants that feed out onto it, residential apartments, bringing through different opportunities in terms of greening. The whole experience becomes quite different. And here's a latent opportunity that's just sitting there within our city. So those of you with deep pockets, I suggest buy some property along Victoria Embankment. Might be your next project. So if we look at Victoria Embankment, again, you know, the potential for a waterfront city, reimagining the space as a linear park, public transit, again, no cars, residential, mixed-use opportunities, buildings that include nature as part of it. We have an amazing river, well, sometimes, but in the future, this would be cleaned again. You know, if you think about advances in technology and improvements in management, that's in Copenhagen, you can actually swim in the harbor. That's how clean the water is. So we have this riverfront opportunity, which again, you know, can be converted into something that's really quite amazing. That we have your river boardwalks, residential opportunities adjacent to it, and really could become an interesting version of a waterfront in our city. And then the last provocation is really this idea of a coastal city. Those of you who recognize this is the strip of the Golden Mile from North Beach to Blue Lagoon, which is quite desolate. And if you park there, you almost feel like quite alienated. It's not a space that gives you comfort. So imagine if we were to reclaim the space, design our sea defense system so it becomes a promenade, extend the Golden Mile, introduce residential, hotels, create spaces for people, restaurants, and so on. So an amazing opportunity that just is kind of sitting there. So again, Dean, I don't know if you're going to take a longer-term view on this particular one. So where does that sort of leave me, and how do I conclude? And I think the main points that the main message I think I would like to leave is that we should look to the future with optimism, and that in the way we design our buildings and design our spaces, think of these as how they can perform better for people, and beyond sustainability, how do we set the seeds for a brighter and more beautiful world? So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, panel, for your insights and forward-thinking presentations. It's time to obviously open the floor for a Q&A session. So if anyone has any questions to ask the panel, please can you raise your hands and we'll bring the mic to you. Any questions? If the panel have any questions they'd like to ask each other, they're also welcome to do so. Okay, great.
Hi there, thank you. Thank you to everybody for the amazing talks and the insights that you've shown us today. The question that I have probably for the two of you is that, you know, you've shown us a picture of what KZN as a province could look like. I'm very nervous speaking on the microphone. But what I'd like to ask is, how do we design for everybody? You've shown something that is quite affluent, that is quite beautiful, and I'd love to live in a city that looks like that, but there's a lot of informal the informal market that we need to consider within those spaces. So how do you see integrating sort of the affluence and the informal into one space? Thank you.
That's a very good question, and it's interesting that the way you've perceived it as being that it serves only one grouping, whereas I feel in 100 years' time we would not have those glaring divisions, that we would have addressed a lot of that. This is the CBD, and if you look at CBDs throughout the country, those are the most diverse in terms of demographic makeup and the most affordable spaces in the city. So in that space, with that kind of vision, I imagine that it would be a whole range of people living in there. But I take your point in that I focused on the CBD, and I've spoken very little about the edge. And again, you know, the township areas I see in 100 years' time completely transformed. The local economies are thriving. There's new businesses in there. There's higher density. It's already happening. And so those lines between, look, I think there'll always be throughout forever divisions in terms of income. I mean, that's just acceptable. But in 100, that's just the norm. In 100 years' time, I think that gap will likely to be closed. I don't know if you want to add to that.
Yeah, as I see it, Durban specifically has had the strategy of not marginalizing the lowest of the low. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but I mean that the reality is that some people can't afford affluent accommodation. Phase where the low income is predominantly in the CBD. But as I see development happening throughout the CBD, I look at us developing nodes at a time. And over a period of time, you'd see that the income difference between the different groups and demographics, I see that over time it will change completely. And we're in a unique position because the lowest of the low are in the CBD, where they don't have to spend vast amounts of their disposable income on transport, which in other parts of the world is quite prevalent. In Durban, we've got the amazing situation where the low income are right at the center of the port and where the jobs are. And I see the future being very positive in the CBD. It might look like it's a bit of chaos at the moment, but in the future, I see it as a melting pot of all kinds of people.
Thank you. Thank you. There was a question at the back. I think Joe had a question.
Sorry, it's me again. If I could be so bold, I've actually got 3 questions. One for Kay Kay, Victoria, and Nathan. Sorry, Dean, not to exclude you. But Nathan, I'm interested in what AR package you're using to generate those images, if any, which seem to be the Durban CBD put into an AI engine and then creating those images. Maybe, that's what I assume they were. If they're not, then please correct me. Kay Kay, I'm interested if as an artist you're working autonomously, as in they're all your ideas and you're producing work, or if you're actually working with patrons of the arts, as in particular people who are interested in your work and are commissioning you to do certain things. And then lastly, a little bit tongue-in-cheek, I just want to know, Victoria, is it true that you're offering membership to the Pencil Club to all attendees today?
Thank you, John.
Yeah, I think the
Yes,
first one.
my answer is yes.
Okay, we've got a yes over here.
I think the first one, thanks for that. It's a good reminder. It was part of my introduction and I had forgotten it. So we got 3 young guys in the office to use AI to superimpose on Google images. And the results were amazing, I mean, as you can see. So we punched in prompts and it kind of, there was some photoshopping that was still involved. But this is the future, I think, of how it can enhance design and give you options.
Oh, thank you for the question. It's a good one. I think from a certain base, I think as an artist, there's chapters in your life and you're experimenting. So as an artist, you're always in the lab, really just like experimenting. What's your story? What's the narrative of your chapter? So I think at that point, you first have to always see where you are when you're creating, and then after, people can gravitate towards that chapter of your work. If it's speaking about African futurism or African optimism, then we can scale it within the commission, because then the approach would then have been from what I've created in the chapter that I'm in, whether it's about African optimism or African metamorphosis. So yes, it really ranges, but I think it allows more multidisciplinary essence to come out from those approaches of how people would love me to interpret my conversation with what they would love. And it always make it a collaboration. So I'm really open for collaboration. And like in this room, there's such a magnitude of people I've always wanted to meet and work with, and I really draw from that. So I really appreciate it, and it is open to collaboration, yes.
Awesome, thank you. Do we have any other questions? I do have a question for Nathan, if I may. I'm just curious. So you presented us with 6 provocations of the sort of future. What do you think needs to be put in place for us to actually achieve that end result?
Very good question. I think obviously our economy needs to thrive. So that's an important basis to all of it. But I think a lot of it relates to how the city and how government responds to these opportunities, because a lot of it is in the public domain. You're dealing with infrastructure of the city that needs to be reinvented. And so having a developmental approach within government towards these types of initiatives and partnering with private sector, I think is the critical basis for this to happen. And I think therein lies the challenge. And it's why we haven't seen a lot of waterfront development, because there are just so many actors in that sort of stage, so to speak. But hopefully in 100 years' time, or towards 100 years' time, that will unravel itself, and we have a lot more cooperation between public and private sectors.
Cool. And KK, one for you, if I may as well. I'm just curious, what is the sort of most interesting installation you've done in a residence with one of your NFTs?
So currently we did, so most of the NFTs that we pop up at Decorex. We did Art Fair, which I find the Art Fair was such a beautiful opportunity for the artists themselves to be part of a fair, and for people as collectors to understand that there's such a range of collection that they could add to their collection. So I think that was, for me, a pivotal way to how we can introduce digital art within the fair aspect, the atmosphere of a fair. And I think it can always evolve from there, because it's just so refreshing to have it in spaces, because people naturally gravitate to innovation.
Okay. Awesome. Thank you. Ladies and gents, does anyone else have a question? Okay, fabulous. Thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate it. After a day that we hope has stimulated your thinking, we'd like to thank Infinity Surfaces so much for constructing a visionary event and for involving us and people who are setting the path towards the future, a space to sort of collaborate. And thank you, gorgeous guests, for coming.